Today on Rambling About Cars, what's the buzz? Tell me what's happening. What's the buzz? I better not sing anymore because we could get a copyright strike.
I don't think that's a real song.
Oh my God, Bruce, you did not just say, we'll get to that in a second. But we got to talk about ID.Buzz because we drove it. And by we, I mean
Clint drove it. You and I have
a special guest that's here today. There's also a new Ranger Raptor out there. We might talk about some dealership shenanigans because there's stuff going on and we have a lot of comments to catch up with. So without further ado, it is podcast time. I'm Christopher Smith, and give a shout out for Mr. Chris Bruce across the way. Woo!
Yeah, thank you, everybody. So we have Clint Simone with us, but before I officially introduce him, I've got to ask everyone, please like this, please follow our show, please subscribe to our show, please review our show wherever you happen to be listening. It's important. I know it seems dumb, but it's quick for you, and it drives us up the weird algorithm charts, and it helps us.
You need to fill up the comments. You need to fill up our email, podcast@motor1.com, and tell Bruce how the hell he doesn't know about Jesus Christ Superstar.
I've never...
Because that's what I was singing, buddy. The greatest rock opera of all time.
No, you performed in Rocky Horror. It's not the greatest rock opera. And it's not even like Quadrophenia. Quadrophenia is the greatest rock opera.
My head's about to explode. Jesus Christ Superstar, not Rocky Horror.
No, Jesus, minute and a half in, we're on fire. This is good.
Anyways, send your comments. We need to get to Clint because you did something awesome.
Anyway, yep. But Mr. Clint Simone, you went to the UK. Was it 3 weeks ago? Almost a month ago now? Something along those lines.
2 weeks ago, I believe. Might have been 3. Time is a blur at this point. I drove the car on February 1st, so today's February 23rd.
And just for the record,
basically 3 weeks ago.
You drove what?
I drove it's not really a prototype. They considered it production, but it is pre-production version of the Volkswagen ID.Buzz. The same really cool electric bus that we saw in concept form in 2017. And then through years since then have seen it with camouflage and have seen it with radar and in cargo van form. And basically everybody just wondered what the hell happened to that incredible concept that we saw. And is that going to make production? So we answered a few of those questions in our first drive video, which you can see on the Motor One YouTube channel. It is up and it is published. But there's still a lot they have to tell us. The van is still wearing what I consider to be my favorite camo I've ever seen on a car. It hasn't made its debut yet. It will be officially revealed to the world on March 9th. And when I say revealed, we have probably 90% of the picture filled in. Maybe that's generous, more like 80%. But we'll get all of the specs for the US. We'll see it without its wrap on. People within Volkswagen have told me that this it will be in two-tone. You will have it available as an option. So I think once they actually peel the wrapping paper off this thing, yeah, that's the concept.
Yeah.
Once they peel the wrapping paper off this thing, people see it in that original two-tone. They get some of those old school microbus vibes. I think they're going to calm down. There seem to be two separate groups of people interested in this. There's the old school Volkswagen people and then the very much new school EV enthusiasts. And there's not a lot of crossover there. So it's interesting the things that those groups of people like and don't like with what they've seen so far.
Okie doke. And you actually got to drive this. You drove it in Milton Keynes in England, although a lot of our B-roll here is in London, it looks like. But you actually got to drive it for about 45 minutes, right?
Which was really neat. I mean, you know, you get on a plane for 12, 13 hours in both directions from California, and I had 45 minutes behind the wheel. And that's not to sound ungrateful. I was very grateful to get to, you know, be one of the first people outside of Volkswagen to experience. That was a privilege for me to do so. But the conditions of it where, you know, you're sleep deprived, you don't quite know what time it was. It's a German spec van in this case, so the steering wheel is just like it is in an American car, but you're driving on the wrong side of the road, and then your passenger is somebody from Volkswagen reminding you that this is a priceless prototype, so to really watch it before you do anything. So with all that stacked in front of me, I went for what I would call a leisurely to moderate stroll in the Buzz all around the greater London area.
And
which
you look
traditionally
like you're
isn't.
freezing in this video. You can tell you're definitely doing the layering approach, that like there's a t-shirt underneath another t-shirt underneath a sweater. So you
It
took
was
one for the team
cold,
for
and it
us
was
here.
something where it's like, and, we don't need to get into it, but Volkswagen was faced with COVID calculations to make of where they wanted us to drive it, how that was all going to work out. So we went to Volkswagen's UK headquarters, which is basically just like a really nice Volkswagen Group dealership, is the best way to explain it. You can see in the background of our video, actually, all of these people's company cars, and there's Audi RS models and new Volkswagens, GTIs everywhere, and they just had the buses out front, and they're like, well, you got a couple hours, just go start filming. I'm like, let's go to town.
Yeah, there are multiple buses out there, and driving around London, I mean, London isn't necessarily the best place known for just really getting a chance to feel a vehicle out.
The interesting thing is, like, everybody expects when you go on a prototype drive, like, you're going to be a car journalist, you're going to toss it back and forth, and you're going to really get into it. This will be a 3-row, 7-passenger van in the US. It's not the vehicle that comes top of mind when you're talking about needing to iron out performance details. Exactly. That said, for anybody who's been driving a minivan or an SUV or a cargo van, if you're a delivery driver, anything that's internal combustion and of this size, switching to an electric version of that vehicle is quite different. The version we drove will be coming to the US, we think, the powertrain as it is, because it's basically a copy and paste from the ID.4, which is of course on sale in the US. So you're dealing with about 204 horsepower, 221 pound-feet. And in this case, rear wheel drive. So if you could,
but you addressed that in your video, that the folks you talked to at Volkswagen, they didn't come out and say it officially, but they kind of hinted at it, that a dual motor system will be available probably eventually.
It's one of those things where on the record, they're not allowed to confirm it, but you would ask questions and they would have the right answer, so to speak. Because the van in the video, I know it gets confusing here because we're dealing with Euro specs and what will be US and what won't be. The one I drove is not coming to the States. That's the standard wheelbase. We are only getting the long wheelbase. So then you logically think, as you ask the engineers, the longer wheelbase will have more room for a bigger battery pack, right? And they would just look at you like, could be. Sure. That is possible. So then you look at ID.4, which has an all-wheel drive setup and a rear-wheel drive setup. The platform is the same. The parts are somewhat interchangeable. So it's sort of the logical path to follow. There's even talk of a base version with a smaller kilowatt hour battery pack than this one has, which could come to ID.4 eventually too. So you could really have it a bunch of different ways.
Yeah. I saw our pals at Inside EVs did a story about that. So So a question though, you were not allowed to film the interior.
That's right. I saw it.
You saw the interior.
Yes.
I have not asked you this before, so I don't know how the embargo and stuff works. Can you tell us anything about the interior?
What I can tell you is that we will have video coverage that debuts on March 9th, and you will see this entire van, the entire thing.
Good teaser.
March 9th, save the date, everybody.
I can also tell you that I'm pretty sure I won't get in trouble. I am a Volkswagen enthusiast. I have owned a GTI in the past. I've talked about that on this podcast before. And the ID.4 for me is a little flavorless. I think they could have taken some bigger steps to make it more fun and just sort of bring in that Volkswagen DNA into it. And I was pleasantly surprised with some of the liberties they took with the Buzz interior. Of course, it's going to be utilitarian. It has to be a 7-passenger van. But I was pleasantly surprised with what I saw in terms of the color palette and things like that. But we'll have much more in-depth coverage coming soon. What's really interesting to me, and this is something I haven't seen, that it's way far in advance, the Volkswagen Group CEO more or less confirmed that they're going to do a camper version, perhaps even with a pop-up top and, all that old school stuff that we love. And I kind of ended our first drive video by saying, I think the van's success in the long term will be how much Volkswagen is willing to lean in to that nostalgia. You can't just build a 3-row people moving van, call it a reincarnation of a microbus, and not do anything that people loved in the original. So I hope that they follow through with those promises.
Yeah, I think that has to be a no-brainer. And you were talking, it was interesting, you were talking about Volkswagen DNA. Did you see versions of the ID.Buzz without the colorful camo wrap on it? I mean, did you see final production versions, or did you just see some of the colors that they're going to offer?
We as an editorial staff have seen a fully unwrapped version, but the ones they have outside were all in this camo, and they run these things all over Europe. You actually remember we ran, Chris, here's what I can point to. A few weeks ago, we ran a story on some leaked photos on the interior, so you might not have to take my word for it. We have a story available on motor1.com that covers some photos of the interior that a journalist not named me posted onto the internet prematurely, but we're still abiding by the rules that we follow and driving this early. But yeah, so we saw it a little bit unwrapped, but like I said, they were driving these things all over Europe. They're trying to get a lot of buzz behind it before it makes its debut in a few weeks.
Well, I mean, it's hard to miss with that colorful camo wrap. I really appreciate automakers that make a big deal out of that, because I mean, it's kind of like the little known secret. Automakers get all kinds of publicity. Surprise, surprise. They put their future cars in camouflage wrap. Sure, they might be doing it partly to hide some details, but they're also doing it because it's going to get them attention, right?
I don't think you put a car in a rainbow wrap and expect it to hide anything. You do that only because people are going to look at it.
At this point, we've seen the shape. This was our first chance to really get up close to it. So yeah, they were holding that part back, but you can make out with your eyes 90% of what it's going to look like. I do think the paint will actually be a bigger deal than people think with how we see it, because the two-tone is going to bring it back to that concept more than what we've seen closer in production form. And
that's really what I want to see, and I think it's what a lot of people will see. You were talking about just trying to give it a little bit more of that kind of just VW fun or that VW quirkiness. I mean, you drove it, and this was the rear-wheel drive model, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, they only have the rear-wheel drive. I mean, did it not meet your expectations? I guess that's what I'd like to know a little bit more about, since you are a Volkswagen enthusiast. Not just from a performance standpoint, but I mean, when I had a Mark II GTI, I finally got why people enjoyed them, and it wasn't necessarily about going fast. It just kind of had this, and I hate to use this cliche, like, fit in my hand like a glove, fits in my back pocket kind of feel, right?
Yeah, there's nothing about it that can be misconstrued with a GTI. I mean, I'll say that really loud and clear. It's a big van, and we drove the version that we're also not getting in the States, which is the cargo van. So behind me was just an empty floor for loading cargo. That's what it's going to be used for around Europe. So the suspension in the rear was set up to take on a ton of crap in the back, and there was nothing in it. So it was very stiff because it was, it just like a pickup truck. If the suspension isn't weighed down at all, you're going to have a different experience with it. Not to just rehash the video altogether, but the first thing that was striking to me was the driving position. It's hard to see because you can't see the interior just yet, but from the steering wheel looking forward, you have this big, barely slanted windshield. The rake on it is really unique. And then if you can find a picture, Chris, right behind the A-pillars, the really thin A-pillars, are these huge windows, the triangle windows that are normally really small in modern cars. They're massive. So you get this almost like fish tank situation ahead of you, where as the driver, you have the windshield right in front of your face, and then these big windows to either side. It's just a really cool view of the road ahead that, at least, something in the last 5 years, I haven't driven anything close to it.
Have you driven like the older Lumina vans, the Lumina APV?
I haven't. I wish I had that
Transport.
I mean, this doesn't, the Pontiac Transport, this doesn't look like that. I mean, I think this looks a lot better. Those had kind of a weird futuristic look back in the when did they come out? It was like was that early 90s when they first came out?
92, 93.
Yeah.
Yeah, like early 90s, where they had this ridiculously long windshield that you could never clean the bottom of.
Right.
It was so long. And then it had those
It looked like a handheld vacuum cleaner is exactly what they look like.
Yeah. I mean, what you're describing kind of sounds like that, just with that big broad windshield sticking out. And then with these two triangular shaped, side windows before you even get to like the driver window that you can put down.
It's cool. I mean, my dad was asking because he's driven the old school microbus a million times, and he's like, "Oh, if you got in a crash in that one, your legs would come off." I'm like, "Well, no, it's not like that in this one. They have crash tests to meet, but there is still a very short front overhang. I mean, you can see it; it's almost non-existent. So for a modern car where they have to put in safety tech and lane keep assist and airbags everywhere, I mean, it is impressive that they were able to keep the front of it so very short. Almost all of the van is wheelbase.
Well, and I guess from that perspective, it's kind of a smart design in that aspect, because when you look at it from profile, they could have lessened the rake on that windshield, brought it down closer, and shrunk, or maybe even gotten rid of those side windows. But then you would have a little bit of a hood in front of you, and when you're in a VW bus, you're not supposed to see a hood in front of you. You're just supposed to see like the world. So, so this design, what you see actually, from what you're describing, is kind of a long dash, right?
Yes, definitely a long dash, but beyond the dash, you know that there's nothing in front of you as you're driving along. It's weird. And then you get to skate around Chris's initial question of did it meet expectations? I think it's how you quantify it. Do you quantify it as a reincarnation of a car that everybody loves? Do you quantify it as a modern electric vehicle? I mean, you have to look at it through a bunch of different lenses, and we haven't driven it fully loaded with people. We don't know the cargo space that it has to offer. So as an option for a family who wants to load this thing up and go on vacation, we don't have the context just yet to see how it will do. We have initial specs and can put together a loose picture on the range, though it hasn't been confirmed yet. If it's using the same battery as ID.4, which I believe in its best form does about 245, 250 miles, you can assume that this being less aerodynamic, a bit heavier, I would hope for an EPA rated range of 200 to 210. I could be off in either direction, north or south of that, but it seems realistic to me.
So, Clint, you caused a bit of a stir several weeks ago when you, as far as I know, you're the only, Motor One is the only publication that put out a video about the frunk of the ID.Buzz, quote unquote, which there is no real frunk. There's no storage space in front of this vehicle. And you look at it and anyone's going to look at this vehicle and say, basically maybe just because of the overhang, there's not much storage you're even going to be able to put in there. But you put out a video, and I can't pull it up right at the second, but showing what happens when you open up the front. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can't believe how mad people got about that. I was getting tweets.
A lot of people got mad for reasons that confused me.
So, I mean, I'll tell you why I did that, but it was funny to me. I mean, people were messaging me, yes, you idiot. Of course it doesn't have a frunk. Why do you need to have this? And I'm like, whoa. Volkswagen gave us like 15 minutes with this before we went to drive it. And they said, you can't shoot the interior. Otherwise, go bananas. So me being a curious person, what do I do? Right? Do something that we know we haven't seen yet, which is somebody just casually mentioned, can you pop the hood? I'm like, that's a great idea. I haven't seen it yet. I'm curious. And sure, I mean, we didn't even know that it would fold forward like that necessarily. So that was neat to see. And then you look right behind and there's washer fluid and other mechanical components. So no, there's no frunk. And I guess if I had to defend it, which I don't think I do, I wasn't saying that this needs to have one and it's a failure because it doesn't. I was just curious what's behind the sheet metal. This is our first chance to get up close to it. I guess it would have been a very cool, creative use of space, like a Rivian cargo tunnel, if they were somehow able to make that usable, or an ice chest like a Mach-E, something like that. But I understand with this van's packaging.
Don't fill it with shrimp. You're going to trigger me.
Tiny amount of space. But
You're
let's tell
about to
people
trigger
what's
me.
there. It's what?
Yeah,
Yeah,
windshield
washer
wiper, brake fluid.
Correct. Yeah. A couple of, I mean, there's not a lot of fluid in an EV, but the fluid reservoirs were in there. And then they didn't go into detail, but just some electrical was behind there as well. Speaking of, they're not sure yet on whether or not they want the Volkswagen badge to light up. But every person with a name tag on that I saw, I told them, please, for the love of God, make it light up. The Americans are buying German cars with light up badges at a rate that nobody thought was possible.
Really?
Mercedes had to go back and make the safety tech standard because people were jumping over optional safety tech to get a light up star on their car.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know either.
Huge.
I mean, that's. I guess I don't have an opinion either way, but if I owned a car that had a light up badge, I guess I would feel pretty cool about it.
I mean, for all the crap Volkswagen is taking about this not looking like the original, they put a giant badge on the front of it. I'm glad that they did a good job with that. Make it light up. Why not? I think it'd be awesome.
Now, see, I don't get the hate from people saying, "Oh, you didn't make it look like the old one." Well, of course you didn't make it look like the old one. I mean, the old one, for all its attractiveness and its coolness, did 0 to 60, and oh wait, it didn't do 60,
right?
And it constantly broke down. And yeah, sure, it's simple to fix. And I have some friends that are into the bus community, and I swear it's like they kind of enjoy it. It's like, ooh, the engine stopped running. Let's pull over and bust out our tools on the side of this road.
Figure out how to fix it. Yeah,
this is going to be great. And it's just like, really? And there sort of is no crumple zone. You are the crumple zone.
Yeah.
Of course, the new one isn't going to look like the old one. But I think Volkswagen did a really good job of capturing that essence and capturing some of the look with what we just talked about, especially with the front, the way they have the windshield raked out and the hood drop off. That way, when you're sitting behind the wheel, you're not seeing anything in front of you except the world outside. I'm not really understanding where the negativity comes from. And even with 201 horsepower or 204, I can't remember which one it has, but
I
even
believe
with that,
the conversion is 204. The horsepower they gave us in kilowatts, so it's always an interesting conversion.
Oh,
but I believe it's 204.
Never my strong suit, but that's
right,
still gobs more power than you ever got in any of the old buses. And I have one more question here, and hopefully this doesn't get me in trouble with anybody, but many years ago in a different life, when I was working as a detailer at a vehicle car wash and detail center in Michigan, this place also specialized in doing some custom interior work, and they had a bus come in. It wasn't a super old bus, but it was like from the 70s or 80s. And
maybe a van again.
And as they're taking interior panels out to install whatever stereo system, how should I say, they found some things that might have been hidden in there for a while. I mean,
are we talking illegal drugs, or what material are we? Adult materials, like what?
Some materials that are presently legal in some U.S. states, but not others.
Okay, gotcha.
You've seen the interior of the new.
Did I look for the weed compartment? No, I didn't. I'm sorry. I was too busy trying not to crash it. But the next time
I wasn't talking about weed.
Busy doing his job.
What are you talking? I wasn't talking about weed. Gosh, going right into the. Oh, going right into the gutter.
A lot of questions on that van so far. I guarantee you they haven't had that direct question asked to them just yet. But it is sometimes fun to speak with our friends in German engineering departments to just see how stupid we can ask questions and how much it makes them upset.
That was an event that stood out to me, and with you on the podcast, I apologize, Volkswagen. I had to ask that question, but I mean, come on, the love van.
Well, okay.
You know what? It's gonna, of course, it's going to have a.
No.
Zip it.
I think you're done here.
All right.
Well, that was
Let's
good.
move things at a more professional perspective.
I was
have
working at the
prepared-
time when they found that stuff.
Okay. No judgments. It's cool.
I
A little
didn't,
bit.
I didn't smoke it.
Probably would have been better if you did.
I have prepared a
Okay.
brief presentation, very brief here, just going through the history of how long we have been waiting for Volkswagen to revive the look of the original microbus, transporter, whatever you want to call it. Different people call it different things wherever you're
Right.
from. But do you guys realize it goes back to 2001? Because I didn't. I knew it was old.
They've done some
I would-
different concepts. Yeah. I mean, they've been toying with this idea for a long time, one way or
So
another.
here is the concept car microbus, and this is, as I'm sharing this is on Volkswagen Newsroom, which is their media press site,
Right.
and this is from February 27th of 2001. So
And that
I
looks
didn't realize-
fantastic.
Well,
Yeah.
look at the front clip as we were talking about. I mean, aside from the shape of the headlights and maybe even not that shape that much, that front clip looks like scary close to the Buzz.
I agree with
It
you.
does.
And they nailed that greenhouse area too with those big windows in front of the A-pillars. The Buzz, you can see it behind the camo. It's going to have those rakes in that
Mhm.
very, very backmost pillar too. So I mean,
Mhm.
they got some of those smaller details in, and I think it's better off because of it. They just tied in the ID4 DNA a little bit more with the face.
And that's
Okay,
back to
so
2001.
that's 2001.
I don't think I ever saw that, or if I did.
So
it's
I
just-
wonder if that had any
slipped out.
intention of being electric as a concept. I'm not familiar enough with that
2001.
concept.
That's real early if it was.
That's like GM EV1.
Sure.
So
era.
here we go. We are moving to 2011, 10 years later. This is the Bully concept.
I
And
remember
again,
that. That looks so good.
Yeah. But we're at 2011 now. We're still a long way out.
Look at those wheels. If they did a wheel like that on the Buzz, that would just be killer.
The turbine wheels. I kind
Yeah,
of
I
dig
agree.
think they're sticking with more aerodynamic shapes, like the ones we saw on that pre-pro truck are going to be production, I believe. But that is just the business right there. That's cool.
So yeah, that is 2011. That's the Bully, and not to be confused with. Hold on one second.
This is
I'm
very
pulling
cool.
this.
I'm glad we're doing this. I think
Yeah.
This
I
is
forgot about a lot of these.
2016. This is the Bud E. So not the Bull E, the Bud E. This was at SEMA in 2016. And again, you can kind of see a lot of that same DNA. This one looks a lot less production ready, especially compared to the other two we just saw. You know, there are no door
That one looks
handles.
like they found the stuff in the compartment that Chris was talking about and then just decided to make it into a concept.
But it wasn't
Exactly.
a compartment. It was like behind the and anyways.
Okay,
we don't need to go
Smith,
through.
You're-
You know, I see a lot
you're
of ID
incriminating some poor soul right now, man.
Exactly.
It was long. Actually, it was longer ago than I care to admit. But
Fair enough.
I kind of see shades of ID4 in there, maybe a little bit. Maybe
A
it's
little
just
bit,
kind of the
yeah.
proportions.
Looks to me
Yep.
like a Nissan right away for some reason. I can't even tell you why.
It's the floating roof.
The roof, I think, the rear portion
Yeah.
of the roof. Yeah. But yeah, so this is 2016. And then finally, we get the ID.Buzz. And let me share that for any of our folks on YouTube who are watching. And then so here we have the ID.Buzz, and that is 2017.
good.
So that's only a year
Yeah.
later. That's the concept
So
of what we're
so good.
finally getting. That this
So
is the ID.Buzz concept.
Here's the
And-
one thing where I wish they would have taken from this and made it production, because as far as I can tell, unless they turned it off and we didn't see it, do you see that really cool ambient lighting that does the trace around
Yep,
the bottom of the hood? That's not going to make production. It's going to be a lighting signature that goes horizontally across the middle that you can see in the pictures we have. I think that's a miss. It would have been really cool to have that ambient lighting trace around the shape of the van that's so nostalgic.
I
Are
agree.
there-
And here's the funny thing. So this is Pebble Beach Concours week of 2017. Our former co-worker, still buddy, Stephen Ewing, he got to drive the concept.
Did he?
This-
I didn't even
Yep.
know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, this is ID.Buzz. What driving the ID.Buzz tells us about VW's future bus. This is from 2017. Stephen Ewing, he drove it.
Yeah.
Like it was a drivable concept that, and
complete with the surfboards on the roof. Yeah.
Yep.
Other
They were
things
going for the
that the
nostalgia there, for
concept
sure.
has that, as far as I can tell, production Buzz will not have that rear bench slid back and forth to create a different, more social environment. At least the initial version of the Buzz won't have that. I mean, I don't believe that's been confirmed anywhere. Who knows what they'll do down the line, but out of the box, it'll be
especially
a more
like the
traditional
camper
seating
version
lineup.
or stuff like that. Who knows? But yeah,
The
it's just
surfboard too. That's just awesome.
It's just interesting that this is a vehicle that you can see the DNA for decades now that Volkswagen has kind of like been refining and working with. And you can see how this vehicle has evolved, and it's taken so long, and it's finally happening.
21
we're finally
years.
getting to see this thing.
Going back to 2001, 21 years.
So with that context, it has to disappoint some people, no matter what. They were never going to, do 100% here. But like, I keep going back to what I thought after I got out of it. Is this thing's success at the end of its lifespan will be how much did they decide to lean into all that heritage? I think doing that and making it just more than a flavorless EV is going to be really important. Some people will buy it no matter what because of what it is. I should mention, if I haven't already, this doesn't go on sale in the States until 2024. It's a 24 model year for us. So there is some wait time
on sale 2023 calendar year, but 2024 model year, which means second half of 2023 for anyone
listening. They confirmed that it's actually not going on sale until the year 2024.
That's news to me. Wow.
Yeah. So it's a long wait time. That happens, like Mark 8 GTI was around in Europe for quite a while before we got it. So Volkswagen does this from time to time, but I thought about it. I'm like, the next big thing with EVs, in addition to EV trucks, which are popping up out of the ground like crazy, EV SUVs, like big 3-row SUVs, aren't really a thing yet. We're just starting to get the ball rolling there. So by 24, I'm not sure what will be on the road and what won't, but this could still be among the early crop of big 3-row passenger vehicles in the EV space.
Yeah. I mean, but if you want to get funny about it, Tesla Model S, they had the 3-row with the jump seat in the back that, 2 people could sit in. But yeah, you're right. In terms of a vehicle that someone could actually use as a 3-row regularly. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, somebody will then say Tesla Model X has 3 rows. You're an idiot. Tesla's the greatest thing of all time. I know. I hear you, Tesla trolls, but
send it to podcast at
widely available.
Yeah, I'll fight with you if you want to.
You know what to do. Let me ask the group a question before we move on here, because this has been on my mind here with the ID.Buzz, and then I think it was last week. There was a rumor, I guess not really a rumor. It was a report where the Volkswagen, I think it was Volkswagen CEO, didn't confirm or deny that a new electric Beetle might eventually come around.
Oh, he hinted at it. Yeah.
And it's a rumor that's been ongoing for a while now that the Beetle could come back. With icons like the Beetle and the bus, thus far, when we've seen rebooted icons proposing EV power, there's just been like this general, oh hell no kind of pushback because I need my gasoline engine. Do you think, because I mean the Beetle and the bus, they were never known for their performance. People like the air-cooled engines, but they weren't necessarily just in love with the engine and the power. Do you think these could be the icons that's just like bring it home for an iconic EV vehicle? I mean, could a Beetle and the new Buzz, aka bus, like be the vehicles that really give an EV powertrain a chance in a rebooted model? You know what I'm saying?
No.
Yeah. No. I do.
Maybe.
So I will answer this, and Clint, you can prepare your answer. And Smith, I think that's a really complicated thing because you're talking about those automotive icons. I think unequivocally the Volkswagen Beetle is an automotive icon, whether you're talking about the United States, Europe, its proclivity throughout South America, especially Mexico and places as a taxi. Like, that vehicle is important and special. And I always wonder whether when an automaker does something that's retro and tries to revive that, whether you can ever have all of that popularity again. That, you know, there's something that nostalgia is great, but it's only great for a certain group of people. That, like, younger people don't have nostalgia for that thing that you're trying to evoke. And I wonder if you're automatically limiting the audience that it could appeal to. And so it with a vehicle like the microbus, obviously the microbus, kind of the first two generations, by the late 60s, you're out of that. You know, you have the Vanagon and, you know, vehicles like that, the Eurovan, that in Europe were the successors to that vehicle, but they never quite caught on in the same way in the United States. So,
but you don't think younger generations are latching on to the history of the bus or the Beetle and embracing it, not because of the power that it had, but just because of the character that it portrayed for so many decades?
That's the thing. I don't think history has anything to do with it. I think you make a good point, but I just wonder, like, you can only appeal to someone's interest in, like, oh, this vehicle is historically important. It's important to my family, my culture, my whatever, so much. Whereas if it's something new and different, then you can kind of create those bonds all in one thing. And I just wonder whether or not you're kind of limiting your audience by going retro in a certain way, is the way I would put it. Clint, tell me I'm right or I'm wrong. I think I might be wrong, but
you get into I mean, not you, but the conversation gets into the weeds because it diverts from, like, mass market appeal. The cars that are going to convert mass amounts of people are electric pickup trucks. So the Lightning is my answer when you say, what's the EV version of a gasoline-powered all-star that we've known for decades, is going to be the big thing to convert a lot of people. The Bug doesn't have enough mass market appeal to do that. The Buzz is an interesting thing for me. I don't know how many units they're going to sell of this. They won't have a problem in Europe, because in Europe, the city centers are cracking down on combustion engines. So people who just need to make deliveries are going to be buying those cargo vans for a very utilitarian purpose. In the States,
and to my knowledge, the commercial version is not coming to the United States, right?
Categorically, no.
Okay.
So we will not have an option for, it's not, you know, Ford is doing the E-Transit for commercial use. The Buzz won't have that.
Mercedes is going to have an electric Sprinter.
Correct. That's right. That's right. I'm not, the way they told it to me, the cargo version won't go to the States because they build it abroad, so they'd have to pay the tax on it.
Stupid chicken tax. Yeah.
The chicken tax. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's fun, right? Semantics. Otherwise, I'm pretty certain that they would bring it over, because it would probably be good as a fleet vehicle too, which has nothing to do with looking at it as a two-tone nostalgic throwback. So that's why the Buzz is so interesting to me, because you really can look at it from completely polar opposites in terms of how you interpret it.
Yeah, well, good discussion. Very good discussion on the electrification of Volkswagen. What do you think about all of this? Listeners, email us at podcast@motor1.com. We do get the emails. We do read them. You can always comment on our article that goes up every Friday at motor1.com. You can always comment on our videos at YouTube, Motor1 Podcast on YouTube. And speaking of comments, Bruce, it's been a little while since we've been reading. We've been getting stuff. We've had so many guests and so many good conversations. We've run out of time, but we are making a little bit of time here today to catch up on a few comments. We have had some emails. We have had some video comments. Bruce, do you have anything pulled up, or I can jump right into it here if you want?
Do you mind if I read the one from Pat? Possibly.
Not at all. I was hoping
because he's
I was hoping you would. I was hoping you would. This came in just a few days ago.
What day was it? 21st. So yeah, Monday.
Yeah, this came in on Monday.
So this is selfish. This is
no, it's not.
You're too nice, and so thank you very much. But I will read this. So he says, "Hey guys, thanks for your interview with Myron Vernus. I had never heard of him before, but he seems like a very fascinating guy. Mr. Bruce, you did a great job of asking relevant questions and keeping things on topic. I truly wish you had more time with him during the show to ask even more questions about his cars and their stories. I know it can be difficult to keep an interview on topic when you have so much admiration for your guest. I would have loved to have heard more about his background and some of the tricks and tips for finding hidden gems. I'm not a big Japanese car fan, but it was great to hear from anybody who has such a love of eclectic cars. My latest 2004 Jaguar X-Type with my latest car is a 2004 Jaguar X-Type with 35,000 miles on it. I bought it from the nephew of the original owner for $5,500. That's a hell of a good buy, bud.
That's right.
Yep. It had lived its entire life under a cover in a parking garage in New York City. No rust. I put a good set of all seasons on it, and now it's my backup winter car and primary car in the summer. So my aunt actually had an X-Type. Hers was I think hers was an 02 or an 03. And I know those cars have a terrible reputation for reliability. My aunt never had a problem with it. It's just never, it eventually got old enough that she needed to trade it in, but she had it for over a decade and it was a good car for her. So if you find the right one, they're decent. But yeah, so thanks for that, Pat.
Absolutely. That was a really great conversation. If you missed the podcast last week, Myron has just the craziest, coolest, eclectic car collection you've ever seen. Amazing. That was a thrill to talk to. And that's a good point. We need to have him back on again because has somebody who has dabbled in the world of interesting cars and cheap car challenges in the past. I would like to know a little bit more because he had that story about finding that like crazy rare Corvair.
Yeah, Raymond Loewy's Corvair on Craigslist
for $5,000. It's like how does that happen? How do you find it? No, that was a really great episode. Let me jump back a couple more weeks here. If you remember, we were talking about design and no, that was the episode prior to that. A couple weeks ago, we had Brandon Turkis on, and we were talking about the new Alfa Romeo Tonale, and we were talking about various Alfa names. And we got an email here from, and forgive me if I mispronounce, please comment to let me know just how far off I am. Rui, R-U-I?
Yeah, no, we've read Rui Ricas, I believe is his name.
We read this email? I don't remember it.
No. We've read previous comments from him. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, this is an email that came in just talking about the various Alfa Romeo names. It says, "Hi, I've only been able to hear the podcast today, so you are probably already full of comments about this, but I would like to take 3 points about the Alfa Romeo names, hoping to bring something new. First, the meeting of Julia and Giulietta. These are feminine names. Julia is Julia. G versus J, as in Julia Roberts. Giulietta, although it can be a diminutive of Julia, is Juliet, as in Romeo and Juliet. This is probably why it got the first real name given to an Alfa Romeo road car. I guess Romeo got lonely after 40 some odd years of alphanumerics. And the second point, that's a great line. Historically, there have been more alphas with alphanumerics than real names. And then we just go on here to list some of the names. Giulietta,
Ondine.
Ondine. Okay. Thanks for that help there, Bruce.
Sure,
it wouldn't be a Rambling About Cars podcast if I didn't mispronounce something. And if I get everything right, I'm going to call myself Christopher Smythe just to make sure everything is covered. Of course, the Spider, Montreal, Alpha Sud.
His Alpha Sud, I had never realized. I knew the Alpha Sud, but I had never made or understood that it was an Alfa Romeo made in the south of Italy, Sud being south. So it is an Alpha Sud. It is an Alfa Romeo made in the south.
Fair enough. Alfetta, which if you're an 80s fan, that you instantly think, well, that's the car that Alf drove? No, it's just a small Alfa. The Arna, Alfa Romeo Nissan joint venture, done the wrong way. Of course, there's the Brera, the Mito, and then the Tonale. followed up in an email saying, "Oh, I missed a couple." Of course, there was the Stelvio. Sprint and the obvious Stelvio. So just a little primer there. But Bruce, since we're talking about alpha names, do you recall the YouTube comment that we got talking about the Tonale?
I sure do. The Tonale. So we talked about this during the show, and we were completely ignorant, stupid guys.
Yeah.
And I said, or someone said, that they should have named it after another pass in Italy because the Stelvio Pass is a very famous pass. Turns out they did do that, and we are just morons. And the Tonale Pass is a very real thing, and it is in Italy. And here, I will pull up the Wikipedia page for anyone who doesn't believe me.
And Piero, thank you for commenting on our YouTube page, Motor One Podcast, bringing this to our attention, because I mean, I've been all around America, but
I mean, I knew about the Stelvio Pass. I had never heard about the Tonale Pass, but hey,
I need to be like Clint. I need to go to London for 45 minutes and drive stuff.
Yeah, but that makes sense. Hey, I hope future Alfa Romeo crossovers, let's name them after all passes in Italy. That makes sense. So,
and while we're talking about the YouTube comments, Ted says, "Thanks for another great, wonderful ramble, guys. That was on the Land Rover Defender on our Alpha discussion." Heart of Jar says, "How about Stelvietta? Better than what could be confused for toenail." Ouch. Interesting comment. And I kind of like it.
Yeah, if you just look at it and you see tone ALE and you pronounce
Toenail.
it like a normal, North American person would, you see toenail. So I understand that not everyone's going to see it. Tonale.
Did you get one of them? Did you get one of them Alfa Romeo toenails?
Exactly.
That thing looks pretty good. How's it hold up to my Ram?
Nice.
Not nice. So send us in your comments, folks. We're going to be doing a lot more with comments here in the future, so we really want to hear from you. Podcast at motor1.com, Motor One Podcast on YouTube, our article on Friday. What's next on the agenda, gentlemen? A little bit of Raptor.
Ranger talk?
Yep. Ranger Raptor talk.
Is that the noise a Raptor makes?
I think so.
Have you never seen Jurassic Park?
The bird kind, unless that's
no. Don't even get me
Park
started
kind.
on Jurassic Park. Those Raptors are nothing like they were in real life. Those Raptors are way too big. Real life Velociraptors are like the size of chickens.
Hey, dude, I gotta tell you something. Sam Neill, he's not a scientist. Laura Dern, daughter of Bruce Dern, also not a scientist. Like,
I happen to be married to a paleontologist, so I'm just going by what she tells me. She could be making me sound like a freaking fool right now, for all I know. I certainly wouldn't be the first time.
Fair enough.
So Ranger Raptor, that debuted just this week here.
It did.
We knew it was coming. I mean, not a huge surprise. I guess the big news is that it's coming to the United States. It's coming to North America.
Big news, finally. God, I was sick of all those comments. Oh, we're not going to get it.
Oh, we're not going to get it.
Why does everybody else get the cool stuff?
We're not going to get it. Well, not only are we getting it, but
you guys think our commenters sound really dumb. Here, let me do it. Oh, I think we're going to not get this one.
Yeah, I know that's not how.
What? So all of our commenters are like in pizzerias.
It's better than making them sound unintelligent like you guys were.
Okay, how about like this? Come on, I really want to get the cool stuff.
Okay, yeah, that's
somebody at Ford.
That sounds like me,
right.
and I'm pretty unintelligent. So
you got it right.
So
somebody at Ford looked at money and they're like, "Oh my God, we can make more of it. This is crazy."
Well, it's interesting when the Ranger first came back to the U.S. market. Of course, it had been a mid-sized truck in other markets for years, and when it finally came back here, and then we knew the Raptor was coming. I mean, I remember kind of quizzing Ford almost on a daily basis. Hey, are we going to get a Ranger Raptor? Are we going to get the Ranger Raptor? And then after it debuted, are we going to get the Ranger Raptor? No, we have the F-150 Raptor here, and that serves all of our needs for the people here. Nobody else in the world gets the F-150 Raptor, so we'll have the Ranger Raptor service, markets in the rest of the world. And now, what do we have? We have the F-150 Raptor, we have the Bronco Raptor, and we have the Ranger Raptor. Yeah. And you're probably wondering, Well, what does the Ranger Raptor have this time around for power? And the answer,
really healthy amount.
well, a
The
really
answer is
healthy,
we're not super sure, but we're pretty sure.
a really healthy
pretty
amount,
sure.
depending on where you're at. Ford,
Yeah.
for the record, Ford has confirmed it's coming to the US and Canada, but they have not released any details on what that truck will be. And I actually asked Ford directly.
I thought
Hey.
we get 100 more horsepower than Europe. I thought that was confirmed.
No, that's for Australia.
That's for Australia.
We're pretty
that's
sure
for market.
We're
getting
gonna
the
get
same
that
version.
one.
That's for markets. That's for markets outside of here. Let's start back at the beginning, folks. 2023 Ranger Raptor debuted for Europe with drumroll
If you're looking at the
288
screen, you can
horsepower.
see it right now. Yeah.
Well, for those not watching on YouTube, and you should, but if you're not, no, hey,
No.
we
Hey,
love you
no,
just
we
the
love
same.
our audio listeners. Hey,
We love
everyone's
our
got
audio
to drive to
listeners.
work or do whatever. So
I
we
meant
love
the
you.
horsepower.
So
not
close your
listeners.
eyes and picture a Ford Ranger that's painted orange and it sits up a little bit higher. That's basically what you got. It's getting the basically the same engine from the Explorer ST, the twin turbocharged 3-liter V6. But in Europe, it's only going to make 288 horsepower and 362 pound-feet of torque. And in markets outside of Europe, it's going to make 392 horsepower,
Hell
430 pound-feet of torque. Basically, Euro emission regulations are keeping it detuned so it can meet emissions regs there. Now, we also know that in some markets, the current diesel, the 2-liter turbo diesel that was available in the previous Ranger Raptor, that's still going to be offered in some markets. We don't know if it's still the same power output. Ford didn't offer details on that, but
there's not a snowball's chance in Hades that's going to be the United States. So
no, the United States
twin turbo 3-liter.
I mean, technically, Ford hasn't said anything regarding details officially for the Ranger Raptor, and Ford told me directly that information on Ranger Raptor and the US spec Ranger will come early next year. So it's still going to be a while before we have the exact info on the US spec. But I mean, let's be honest.
Do you want my scalding?
It's
hot
most
take?
likely going to be. It's most likely going to be the twin turbo V6.
Spill the tea, Clint. Spill the tea.
Between the less expensive and brilliant Maverick and Global Ranger coming to the States next year, if you go to a Ford dealer and buy a Ranger this year, I think something fell and hit you in the head. Unless you absolutely need a truck, you would be out of your mind to buy a current generation Ranger, which for the most part is not at all the segment leader. It's fine and does okay, but against Tacoma and stuff, this Global Ranger, the next gen, looks like a considerable step forward, which is crazy to me because the current Ranger is not that old in the US. I think it was 2019 that we did the first drive for that.
But
truck.
it was already for sale in Europe for a long time.
Yeah. That
it was
truck,
old.
That
but
platform has been around for many, not many years, but it's been around for a few years. It just happened to show up late to the party in the US.
This is a big step forward, and I think that that if 390 is accurate, that is a good amount of power for a mid-sized truck. Think of how underpowered mid-sized trucks have been for the most part. They touch at 300 horsepower or so, I believe, in the Nissan Frontier, but 390 is a big deal. That's new territory.
I mean, I don't know that 300 is underpowered. I mean, I think it's adequate for that segment. But yeah, I mean, the whole point of Ranger Raptor is big power and jump over stuff. So the current Ranger Raptor for Europe, it didn't really have the big power, but I mean, it had suspension upgrades. This one will have the power, and of course, it's going to have the suspension upgrades. What it has 25% increase in damping force. It's getting Fox shocks. Anytime an automaker releases official press images of their vehicle jumping, you can feel pretty confident that, okay, you can have a little bit of fun with it. Don't be like the dude from 10 years ago that launched his F-150 Raptor 25 feet in the air and then set off every single airbag for 100 feet around him. You're not going to do that in any production pickup. But yeah, the Ranger Raptor, I'm pretty excited to see what it has in store for the United States. Interior wise, you're going to get more of the code orange contrast trim. Otherwise, it's still pretty much it's going to feel like a Ranger.
Good looking truck.
Except
I'm really
step on the
excited for it.
gas. Yeah. Of course, no information yet on pricing.
No, that's going to take.
I mean,
a while.
it'll be less than an F-150 Raptor.
Good job.
Of course.
I feel pretty safe in coming to that conclusion.
You're good at your job.
Don't get me started. So we still have a year to wait before we find out all the officials. But
let's do.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, exactly. I wanted an opinion thing because honestly, and I think this just comes from my personality. I prefer a smaller vehicle in general, and this is coming from someone who has never owned a pickup truck. But those two caveats in mind, I think I would take this over an F-150 Raptor. Yeah, it's going to be less powerful, but it's going to be far more usable day to day, drivable day to day. Like, how often am I going to go off road? Like maybe, is it going to be once a month? That's going to be pushing it at best, given my current lifestyle. It's, it's going to be a handful of times per year.
There's not a lot that this can't do, I imagine, that an F-150 Raptor can do other than just really haul ass in a straight line. But, I mean, trail-wise, this will be narrower and fit on much better trails than an F-150 Raptor will. When we were off-roading the TRX last year, it was running into everything. It was scraping against all sorts of crap. So, I mean, this thing will actually be much better on the majority of trails for people. And for where I'm at in Southern California, mid-size trucks are king. They outsell full-size trucks as a whole by a long shot. So I think this is a really important vehicle for the Southern California desert market too, of which there's a huge enthusiast crowd.
And if I had this vehicle, I mean, I don't go off-road much anyways.
Yeah,
I would make it a point to go off-road more with this vehicle.
For sure.
I have some older contacts in the Raptor community. I do know there are some Raptor specific events that go on in Ohio, Bruce. If you want me to, if you want to plunk down some coin in this, and I can hook you up with some info. But
if I'm buying a car, here, this isn't going to be what my wife lets me buy. Trust me, we've had this conversation.
Put stuff in the back. No, I mean, 20 years ago, a new Ranger is like an F-150 20 years ago, size-wise, right?
Yeah, totally.
I don't have. If you want to send comments about how I'm off like by a couple inches here and there, that's fine. But in the grand scheme of things, I mean, the half-ton trucks have gotten much bigger. So really. Huge. I mean, if you're driving a 20-year-old F-150, which at this point is a 2002, 2003, 2000 model, there's still a lot of those on the road. The new Ranger is kind of that size, and that's the size I prefer. I have had a couple pickup trucks, one of which was an older Ford F-250 that was a super cab long box. It was ridiculous and awesome just for how long it was. But it was always a pain to just try to maneuver around. Something smaller like this. Yeah, I mean, if I was interested, I think I'd go for this over the F-150 Raptor.
Yeah.
But it's a neat entry, and it's going. My suspicion is it's going to compel, especially Chevrolet and Ram, into Ram. Obviously, they don't have a midsize truck yet, but maybe. I could see maybe a speedier Colorado coming out of this. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we're kind of, I hesitate to say uncharted territory here because we've had compact trucks and mid-sized trucks before. But the compact truck segment had some pretty good push behind it. But for the longest time, the only mid-sized truck was your Dodge Dakota back when Dodge, still had pickup trucks. And now we have the Ranger back, and we have the Colorado and the Canyon, and ironically enough, there is nothing from Ram. So I mean, I think Ram is watching this all very closely and saying, damn it.
Keep in mind,
what can we import?
Tacoma owns this space in a lot of ways too, especially with TRD Pro out there. For what it's worth, the other week when I got to drive the new Tundra, the twin turbo V6, brilliant engine, power over 400 with the hybrid version. And I asked one of the engineers if it fits in the Tacoma, and he kind of like, it doesn't not fit. So That would be awesome if they could shove that beautiful twin turbo 6 in the Tacoma. It'd be a rocket ship.
Hey, Smith. So we've got about 15 minutes left for this week's episode. Do you want to try to do your dealer rant and I'll pull some images up, or do you just want to call it? It's up to you, man.
I mean, I don't know if that I have a dealer rant, but has
kind of do.
Admittedly, has the senior person in this group. I mean, I've had some dealings with dealers over the years, and I've even worked for some dealerships earlier on in my career, and I've never seen automakers and dealerships at odds as much as it seems to be just in the last couple months. And of course, by that, I'm talking about a lot of the markups that dealers are doing, not just on popular vehicles, or specialty vehicles, but just like, I mean, vehicles that are supposed to be mainstream. And I mean, we just saw more of that today. Bruce, you actually wrote this article that you're sharing right now on Motor One, on the podcast. Hyundai's latest automaker fed up with ridiculous dealership markups. Hyundai, tell us a little bit about this story.
Sure thing. So this came from Hyundai and Genesis, and full disclosure, Automotive News obtained this letter from dealers, from Hyundai and Genesis dealers. We did not, but we reported on it. They, in very uncertain language, put it out there that they are not happy. And I will read you the portion that to me was like, wow, you guys seem to be serious. Here, I'm scrolling down.
Hey, nice video.
Sorry. Yeah. Oh man, I can't find. Okay. We cannot stand idly by watching the actions of the aforementioned dealers undo all of the efforts we collectively have put into making these brands what they are today. Like, that to me was just like, we're fed up. We're not taking this anymore.
Yeah.
And if you mark up our cars to some stupid degree, we're going to punish you. But the interesting thing is that the automakers and the dealers are technically independent things. Automakers sell their vehicles to dealers. Dealers then sell their vehicles to consumers. But there's this symbiotic relationship where one can't really exist without the other, because it's just kind of the way it is. And
you just have to get the dealer lobby to go away. It's one of the most powerful lobbies in the country.
It is, but the fact is that those are the folks that a lot of times are contributing to local elections. So when you look at city or state elections, those are the guys who have the money to contribute to them. And so those are the people that are getting the most protection within a state. And it just becomes this whole kind of tangled web of nasty grossness.
Well, I very rarely am the look at Tesla guy, but look at Tesla. In this case, they actually are doing it
we
right.
Have to go there.
Say what you want. You know what you are getting. When you go, you can buy the damn car on your phone. You don't have to go into a dealership. God forbid you're somebody who a dealership can take advantage of too if they perceive you as not being up to snuff with your knowledge. You know exactly what you're getting, just buying it straight from the OEM. And
this is awesome.
Shame that more OEMs can't get around the dealer model, because it would be much better for the end user. And these last few months, this last year, has been absolute certainty there that the end consumer is getting screwed over.
In many, Clint, I totally agree with you. This is just me kind of showing counterexamples, but in many examples, those dealer bodies have existed for over a century.
I know that they employ people too. I mean, they're good people that work at dealerships, but it's predatory. It is at the point where it is predatory. If you're putting $10,000 over the price of a car for the end consumer, not to mention a freaking destination charge that's most of the time over $1,000 for no apparent reason.
But that comes from automakers. Destination charges are automakers. I agree. And by the way,
the end user,
this is awesome.
Like, we can mitigate some of these charges.
You guys are handling my rant for me. I love
That's nothing. Like, we ran a story just a few weeks ago of a Kia EV6 with a $19,000 markup, or nearly $19,000.
That your article is so interesting to me, Bruce, because Hyundai Kia Genesis, I believe, is at the top of the naughty list, so to speak, with the worst markups across the board in the industry right now.
What I understand, mea culpa, like I haven't looked into this, but from the automotive news story, Kia is amongst the worst.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, I guess.
Telluride, they're marking up to the damn moon.
But
didn't we see a Telluride at one point that was over six figures?
Yeah, it was in like Mercedes GLS territory.
Telluride, it's not a C8 Corvette, it's not a Shelby GT500, which, if you recall, when that first came out, I mean, we were seeing GT500s close to $200,000. You know what? There's always been that with niche vehicles, but especially now with
right.
And here's why I wanted to have the conversation, because I mean, we're at a crossroads for dealers. Bruce, you said that a lot of these dealership bodies have existed for over a century, and yeah, but that doesn't mean that
if you look at your Ford, your Chevrolet,
it doesn't mean they can just keep right on trucking as if nothing has changed, because guess what? It's 2022. A lot has changed just in the last 20 years, never mind the last 40 or 50, where a lot of these dealerships are still stuck in the same routine. For God's sakes, putting a $5,000 upcharge on a vehicle for interior protection. I mean, that's like the same,
or for nothing at all, or just I mean, that's
the same scammy Scotch Guard protection they did back in the 70s and the 80s. Oh, we can put this special protection on your seats, so you'll never have to clean your interior ever, and it's only an extra $1,000. And it's like they're still pulling this stuff in 2021. And I mean, for the record, it's not just Hyundai and Kia.
Oh God, no. I have.
I mean, just in the last month or so, we've got General Motors.
Yeah,
Bruce, you beat me to adding it to the stream again.
Sorry,
I was like one click away. That's okay. You've got it.
No, this is not a Hyundai Kia issue. That I do not want to insinuate. This is a market-wide issue.
Yep. GM, Ford. I can't remember if it was a little before or a little after GM.
I think
Ford.
It was a little.
Ford
after
sent
here.
a message to their dealers saying, "Hey, you need to back off on your Lightning crap."
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember correctly, it was even relating to, I can't remember if it was GM or Ford, even relating to like changing up how people can reserve a vehicle. Oh, you want to put a reservation down on this vehicle before it goes into production? Well, okay, the dealership's going to charge like an extra $1,000 just to put down a deposit. And yeah, the automakers are like, hell no, you're making us look terrible. And they're going so far as to saying you are violating your contracts,
your franchise agreement,
your franchise agreements for upholding certain codes and regulations for us as a manufacturer. Because I mean, yeah, hey, you know what? Not everybody lives in Detroit. Not everybody drives through Dearborn. Their impression of Ford is going to be what happens to them at the dealership. And when you go in and you see, you have $90,000 you want to spend on a cool muscle car, and you go and you think, oh, I'd really love a new Shelby GT500. And you know what? $90,000 is a lot of money, but that should easily buy you a decent GT500, because they're starting in the mid 70s. Mm-hmm. And I got an email just this week. And the reason I'm saying this is because that's the exact situation. This guy said, "Hey, I saw that my local dealer had a Shelby GT500, about $90,000. I went to go in and look at it. It was stickered at 92, and then he had an adjusted dealer markup and was asking 125, and he walked out."
Mm-hmm.
So there's a sale lost to Ford. Now the dealership is probably thinking, well, somebody will come along eventually and buy this car, but that's not what Ford wants. You're in the business of selling these vehicles for Ford. And I've never seen so many automakers issuing statements like within just a matter of weeks about these dealer practices. And even today, I put up an article from Infiniti. This one really got me because it came from Infiniti, their finance division. And I talked with Infiniti directly and got confirmation that yes, this actually went down. Infiniti has become aware of some dealers not holding up their end of the agreement on lease deals. When leases are coming due and people are deciding they want to buy out their vehicle, there are some dealers allegedly that are plugging in additional fees at the end, saying,
"Oh, how do you?" Because that's a contract, essentially. You
exactly.
sign that contract at the beginning.
It's a contract. So Infinity,
I will pay X at the end. I don't know how you.
And apparently there are reports to the Better Business Bureau, Consumer Credit Protection or Consumer Financial Protection, attorneys general, because some dealers allegedly are even refusing to do buyouts, even when it's financed through Infinity. And why? Well, because used car prices just in the last 6 months have gone insane. Never mind maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago when somebody entered into a lease, right? Mm-hmm. Because when you enter into a lease, there's
3 or 4 years generally.
There's a pre-established amount that's put into that contract. When your lease is up, this is what the vehicle will be worth if you want to buy it out. And now here we are 2 or 3 years down the road. Well, guess what? That vehicle is no longer worth $25,000 at the end of your buyout. Right now it's selling for 35 or 40. So Mr. Dealer or Mrs. Dealer is like, well, yeah, we're not going to let you do that because we want you to just turn this lease vehicle in so we can then sell it for $35,000 instead of letting you buy it out for $25,000. And it got to the point where Infinity's financial arm sent a communication to dealers saying you have to honor your contracts. It's like,
which is basic contract law. It's like the very basic.
But it blows my mind. It's like, you even have to do that? It's a contract. It's a print contract.
It's a legal argument. It's a binding legal thing. Like,
well, and
if it were the other way around, there's no way the owner could do that and say, no, my vehicle's not worth XY anymore. It's worth YX. Like, there's no way that could ever work.
Well, and let me wrap up this rant by another article that I wrote today that we just found out about. There's a House bill in the West Virginia state legislature that basically, for the most part, would ban automakers from doing over-the-air updates on vehicles.
Which I'm not sure how you do, honestly.
I mean, I want to be clear. It's a bill. It's being discussed. It's not law. I'm not a law professor. I'm not a law expert by any means. I did spend some time going through this bill. I did find the area of particular interest, and I'm going to read that for you right now. In short, the bill was allegedly brought forth by a dealership association tied with West Virginia, and it's supposed to be protecting.
Group. Would that be unfair to say?
Hey, I'll leave it up to the listeners to call it whatever you want.
Okay.
But the idea was to protect dealership interest, right? A few organizations have called out the law for this particular
bill.
Passage.
It's not a law yet.
Right, bill. For this particular passage in the bill that says, quote, except for experimental low volume, not for retail sale vehicles. And let me rephrase that here from the beginning. This passage outlines what automakers, auto manufacturers cannot do. Mm-hmm. Except for experimental low volume, not for retail sale vehicles, cause warranty and recall repair work to be performed by any entity other than a new motor vehicle dealer, including post-sale software and hardware upgrades or changes to vehicle function and features and accessories for new motor vehicles sold by a licensed new motor vehicle. Provided, however, this language shall not include any post-sale software upgrades to the motor vehicle's navigation or entertainment system. That's a lot of speak that basically says, automakers, if you want to do over-the-air updates to your vehicles that's not pertaining to navigation or entertainment, the dealership should do it. Now, will that bring extra cost to the consumer? Don't know. If it's done like an official recall or something, Probably not. I don't know. I don't know exactly what's going to go on here. But anytime the vehicle comes into the dealership is going to get some sort of payment, whether it's from the consumer or from the manufacturer. So now, I mean, this reads has desperation, maybe. I mean, we're moving into an era where vehicles are going to be significantly less complicated. When you think about everything that's going on in an internal combustion engine, fuel, air mixing in the intake goes into an intake runner, which then goes into a cylinder via a valve mechanically opening that then fires and sends a piston shooting down, one of 4 or 6 or 8 that spins another big shaft at the bottom while oil is shooting in all over the place. Yeah. Versus an electric motor that spins.
Turns.
That spins.
Yeah.
No coolant. No coolant, no exhaust.
Pump, you have no fuel tank. You have no evaporative fuel system. You have no fuel lines. You have no fuel pump. You've got, you are simplifying all of that.
Dealerships make a ton of money on service. Back when I was doing dealership work, I mean, that was easily like the bread and butter. Yeah, they're selling cars and they're making some money on selling cars, but the real bread and butter was people coming in for service. So now you're facing a future where there's going to be considerably less service. And I think we're starting to see dealers, some, they don't want to change the century-old ways, right? Mm-hmm. They don't want to evolve their structure. And I mean, this proposed law in West Virginia just kind of screams desperation. I don't know. That's my dealership rant. I've never seen so much conflict between dealers and automakers in a short period of time as I've seen just in the last few weeks. And I will bet $1 gazillion that it's not done. We'll see. We're going to see other manufacturers coming in and saying, "Yeah, you guys need to stop this." The question is whether or not the manufacturers really clamp down, or if it's just kind of a "shh, hey, don't do this," but really, we don't care.
Yay! Yeah, you paint an interesting version of the future. I have to say, because I hadn't until this moment, I hadn't thought about it further in the future, where the services just become basically nothing. Like you're still going to have brake fluid. You're still going to have some sort of
there'll still be some service, but
no sort of coolant, but
no regular oil changes.
No, I mean, you're still have rotate your tires, stuff
tires,
like that,
brakes, but no regular oil changes. Yeah, no coolant flushes, no transmission flushes.
No transmission. Yeah.
I imagine it's kind of a scary future. And I imagine there are a lot of dealers that either don't want to change or don't really know how. I mean, what was it last year? I think Cadillac said to its dealer network, "We need you to invest X amount of money in EV infrastructure for your dealership charging." And like 30 or 40% of Cadillac dealers said, "Oh, no, thanks. We'll just quit being dealers." Mm-hmm. I mean, that kind of blew my mind when that happened.
Yeah. I mean, what's the old proverb that something may you be damned to live in interesting times, something along those lines, that, well, interesting can be good or interesting can be bad. And
dealerships can evolve. I have faith in dealerships. Dealerships can evolve.
There's still going to have to be someone to sell a car to a person.
And
it just depends on what that looks like.
And there still needs to be a point of service to help you when you need help. It's just dealers are going to have to evolve to the new normal. And there's just so many that refuse to even acknowledge a new normal is already in progress.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's one of those industries where over the last 30 years, I've seen so many industries evolve with the times. And it's just like, you drive by the dealership. What do you see? The stupid ass balloons on the antennas.
Or the wavy balloon man.
With the wavy, wacky, inflatable tube man guy standing out front with big neon letters in the windows. Buy here, pay here. The only thing missing is like the dude in the plaid sport coat out front. But even
Clint,
then, if you pull in to look at a car,
Smith,
there's some guy that runs right out with a business card. Hey, how you doing? Dude, I'm just turning around because I miss Dairy Queen.
Clint, by my count, you have not talked for 15 minutes because Smith and I have been old men on the internet.
You really rambled about cars, but I gotta go, boys.
Yeah, it's time to wrap up here, anyways.
Yeah, it's time to wrap up. You got 2 minutes out of our old man time, so you got 2 minutes. Tell us what you think about the future of cars or the future of dealers.
I legitimately have to go.
Okay.
The dealership talk is ongoing. I think you should actually do a whole other podcast episode on it and have a relevant guest. Those are my thoughts.
We should. Do you think you should do it, folks? Email us podcast@moto1.com. Comment on our article. Comment on our YouTube page. Clint Simone, thank you very, very much for joining us and for putting up with these old guys as we just ramble away.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, Clint, thanks for joining us. Sorry that the last bit was just us being old men on the internet, but I guess you're going to have that sometimes. But thank you so much. I understand you got to go. Good afternoon, good evening, or good night. We appreciate everyone who listens. You know the spiel. It's episode 59, or it's episode 60. Sorry.
Episode 60.
So, yeah, bye-bye. And Clint has to go. So, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks for listening.